Services Specialist here at MSU Libraries, and I have the pleasure to introduce Melissa Fortson, your first concurrent speaker of the day. Melissa holds a BA in English from Sewanee University of the South. She also studied education and got her teacher certification in English grade 7 through 12. She earned her MLIS at the University of Alabama, and she's worked in the aging and disability communities in Nashville, Tennessee. She's also worked as a Braille and talking book librarian and in instructional technology. And Melissa's professional interests include the provision of access to information for people of all abilities and the use of technology to support teaching and learning. Without further ado, Ms. Melissa Fortson.
Good morning. You've heard a little bit about me. So basically, I worked in the disability community before I became a librarian, with the idea of working in library services for people with disabilities. That's a really, really specific type of specialization. There's not a lot of those jobs available, but fortunately, when I got into library school, I realized that a lot of the things that appeal to me about library services for people with disabilities are true of all facets of librarianship. The ability to work with technology, the ability to teach, and also to talk with people, help them determine what they need, and help them meet those needs. So I kind of came into librarianship from that perspective. I currently work as a research and instructional services librarian at Alabama, which is kind of a fancy term for a reference librarian, reference, instruction. I'm our library's liaison to the Office of Disability Services. I'm not the ADA coordinator. Basically, my job is to make sure that we're communicating well with the Office of Disability Services about any changes that are taking place at the library. For example, just this week, we're implementing a new discovery system. So it was really important for me to encourage them to participate in our usability testing to make sure that was going to work for everyone. iPad. We got the iPad a few months ago at the library. We got 3 of them, not totally knowing what we were going to do with them. I hear that's a no-no to acquire a piece of technology just because it's pretty, not having a specific plan in mind. But we did have the idea that we might use them for some roving reference and also outreach type work when we go to orientations or events, to be able to show people library resources on the iPad. We're also going to be using it for some on-site services, possibly in the dorm. So we really just got them. We're kind of figuring out how we want to use them. And because of my background and my interest in accessibility, I thought, well, I want to see, how you can use the iPad to make library resources more accessible. Or what are the accessibility features of the iPad? So I've been teaching this to myself. I know a little bit, and I'm going to show you the little bit that I know. So this is a first for me, and with all the tech hookup and everything. So I hope things go smoothly. If not, I have a backup plan that rather than myself demoing things live, we're going to watch someone else do it in video form. Okay. All right, so what to expect this morning. The conference program, the description of the conference program tells you we're going to talk about iPad accessibility features such as Zoom and VoiceOver. We're going to talk about iPad apps designed to help people meet their access needs. And then we're also going to discuss how libraries can utilize iPads as a low-cost, flexible, assistive technology solution. We're going to talk about library users and their access needs. Just to give us kind of an underlying definition, what is assistive technology? What's an iPad? What are the accessibility features of the iPad? We're going to talk again about apps, the difference in using the built-in applications that come with the iPad out of the box versus using a third-party app, how you can find these kind of apps to help people with access needs. And we're going to show some specific apps, and then again talk about libraries. Okay. Yes? Awesome. That's it. Cool. And then computer back to computer. Okay. 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 Sounds good. All right. Sorry about that. All right. So we're going to talk about those things this morning. The first thing I want to start with is that people and their disabilities are unique. So while we're going to talk keep in mind is that people generally seek help for their access needs and not their abilities. And what I mean by that is you're not going to have someone come into the library and say, I'm blind. I need an article, right? I need 3 peer-reviewed articles for my paper. And this is also true when we're looking for apps and things like that. We're not looking for apps for people who are blind. We're looking for apps to help people who have trouble accessing traditional print. We're not looking for apps for people with communication disabilities. We're looking for things to assist people communicate. So while I'm going to be using some labels just for purposes of the presentation, I just want to put it out there that we're talking about people and access needs versus abilities. And this is also good to keep in mind when you're looking for apps. We'll look at this in a minute, but if you search for screen reader, you might find something. If you search for blind, you're probably not going to find anything, but if you search for magnifier, you search for what you need to do versus a label, you're going to have more luck finding resources to meet that need. Okay, so we're talking about assistive technology. Well, what exactly do we mean by that? This is a really formal definition from the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. It defines assistive technology as any item, piece of equipment, or product system, whether acquired commercially, modified, or customized, that is used to increase, maintain, or improve functional capabilities of individuals with disabilities. Okay, so of course, this is like a legal statute, so we've got a lot of wordiness. Basically, assistive technology doesn't have to be really fancy or high-tech. It could be a wheelchair or a communication device or a software product, but it also could be pen and paper. It could be a highlighter. It could be eyeglasses. If we aren't using assistive technology now, generally because we're humans and we age, at some point we're going to be using some type of assistive technology, something to assist us with our hearing or our vision or our mobility. So again, this can be a device that has the purpose of helping someone with technology, or it can be something we already have. It can be something cheap. Again, like a whiteboard, for example. The iPad, to me, kind of can fall under 2 of those categories. One, it doesn't have to be expensive. So while the iPad itself has a pretty big price tag, when you compare it to the cost of acquiring all those separate technologies, it's actually really affordable. And it also kind of falls under that category of things the library may already have. You might already have one because you're like us and you're kind of playing with it, trying to figure out what you want to do, or you might have purchased it for another purpose. So again, it can be something that you already have. Okay, what's the iPad? I looked at the conference program, and there's several presentations that are going to be talking about the iPad. So I probably don't need to go too into depth of what an iPad is, but just to get us all on the same page, the iPad is Apple's mobile, connected, multi-touch tablet device. What I mean by that, if it's mobile, you can take it with you. It has all the necessary hardware and software built into it. Mobile can even sometimes mean you can use it while you're in motion. Connected, the iPad accesses the internet via Wi-Fi. Some models utilize 3G, which is like the cellular connections like your phone uses to access the internet. It's a tablet. A tablet is typically between the size of a smartphone and a laptop or netbook. It typically has a flat screen and an on-screen keyboard. It's light. And multi-touch means that the iPad can register more than one point of contact at a time. So rather than being a device where you input things by use of a stylus that can only recognize one area of the screen at a time, you can do things like pinch or zoom. They're using that a lot on CNN these days. I don't know if you've seen like the maps, and the guy pushes them across the screen. So that's a multi-touch type device. Apple is the other part of the definition. It's manufactured by Apple. Most people are using the iTunes application to kind of sync their device. Most people are downloading applications for the iPad through Apple's App Store. Okay, so the accessibility features of the iPad. The iPad comes kind of standard, out-of-the-box accessibility features built in. And this doesn't sound that revolutionary, but it really is. A lot of people are used to purchasing additional equipment or software in order to be able to use a device. Well, Apple, it's a certain level of access is built right in, and that really kind of represents a universal design approach. Universal design being kind of right out of the box, designing a device or a building or an instructional program to where everyone can use it. So again, iPad is pretty unique in that it right out of the box has a lot of features built in. Okay, what are those features? Some of them that I'm going to talk about are voiceover, zoom, large text, white on black, speak auto text, and triple click home. A lot of these features are targeted toward individuals with low vision, as is the case with the ones that I just mentioned. And I should pause here to say that I have all these presentation materials and all the links that I'm going to be mentioning online. I should have mentioned at the beginning so folks weren't frantically scribbling or typing. It's all on my website. A shortened link to the materials is bit.ly/MSU LibCon 11. So the conference hashtag with an 11. I'll put that up again at the end. Sorry for not mentioning that at the beginning, but all the presentation itself and then all the links I'm going to mention as well as some others are up on my website. Okay, so these are features designed to assist with vision access. So let's take a look. Yes, we're seeing the iPad. Both screens. Okay, so here's our iPad. The accessibility features, one way you can access them is through the settings panel, which is at the bottom of the screen for me because I have it in the dock. It's under General, and then Accessibility. It's down toward the bottom. So Settings, General, Accessibility. And this is where you get the option to activate some of the features I mentioned. VoiceOver being a screen reader type application. It actually reads aloud I'll say a lot of the content that someone interacts with on an iPad. VoiceOver reads aloud system information, and it reads aloud text in some applications. Zoom would be a magnifier. Large text, that's somewhat self-explanatory. We'll take a look at that. White on black allows one to reverse contrast, so rather than seeing black text on a white background, one can flip that. That's sometimes easier for people with certain types of visual disabilities. Speak auto text allows one to have the iPad automatically speak auto corrections and capitalizations. So let's actually take a look at these. I'm going to turn on VoiceOver. And if you're doing this along with me on an iPad, you might want to put it on mute just so we don't have a chorus of voiceovers all at the same time.
VoiceOver on. Settings.
Okay, so it's on, so it just told me VoiceOver is on. VoiceOver speaks the items on the screen. So I can get it to do this in a couple of different ways. I can just run my finger over the screen and it'll read whatever's under my finger.
VoiceOver speaks items on the screen. To select an item. Touch it. To activate the selected item. To activate the to scroll. Flick 3 fingers.
Okay, so I just ran my finger over those options and it read it aloud. There's also some other ways to interact with it. As it mentioned, I have sight and I'm doing that, so it's very easy for me to see the words and run my finger over them. But you can also access these features through gesture or touch. So to select an item, you touch it.
To select an item. Touch it.
To activate an item, you double tap. To scroll, you flick 3 fingers. One thing that makes the VoiceOver easier to use, I will say, is if you...
Back button. Accessibility. Back button.
Okay.
Settings. VoiceOver. Home. Button.
Is if you turn on this triple click home option, I have it telling me as.
Home. Settings. Triple click the home button. Heading.
So what that means is when I click turn black and white on or off, if I want to turn zoom on or off. That makes it a lot easier, particularly for someone like me who may not want to use VoiceOver all the time. So if I want to turn it on and off, triple click.
Lower. Settings. Home. Lower. Accessibility options.
Okay, so I can turn it off.
Cancel. Button. Cancel. Button.
And since it's on, I have to tap it twice.
Double tap.
It changes the way you interact. If it wasn't on, I could tap an item once. So I can use VoiceOver again, kind of the same way I showed you on the settings page. I can run my finger over certain areas of the screen and it'll read it aloud. Here's what the system information sounds like.
iPad. Status bar item. 11:06 a.m. Status bar item. Orientation lock. Status bar 91% max. Double tap to open.
Okay, so it told me that it was the iPad, it told me what time it is, it told me my battery level. I can navigate between all these different apps in a similar way. I can just run my finger.
Double contacts. Double notes. Double tap maps. Videos. YouTube. iTunes. Game Center. Double tap to open.
Another way to move from item to item, as I mentioned, it's easy for me to look at it and do that, is that one can flick their fingers.
FaceTime. Camera. Photo group. Photos.
So I'm not touching,
Email.
can't really see my hand, but I'm not touching these apps. I'm just hitting the screen in a random place. And it's moving from app to app.
Safari. Double tap to open.
And so it'll say what I'm on.
Mail. Double tap to open.
I'm on mail and I need to double tap it to open it.
Wi-Fi on alert. Cannot verify server identity. Wi-Fi. Cannot verify server identity. Cannot verify server identity. Cancel.
Okay.
Button.
This is where the ability to turn.
Turn voiceover off. Turn voiceover off.
Okay.
Voiceover on. Mail. Inbox. 2. Button. August 8. To August. To reply. HD. Instead of replying to this email. Hello. The reply has been added to your question. My account shows that one of the books I have returned to the library is still listed as checked out.
So I'm just running my finger over the screen.
So you're not having to tap, you're just scrolling.
I'm just scrolling my finger. And I don't even have to be on the actual text. I can, if I use the flick, it'll just kind of go to the next segment.
What do you mean the flip?
If you,
Inbox.
let me turn this off.
Like flick with your finger?
Mhm.
Accessibility option. Dismiss app switcher. Dismiss app switcher. Voiceover off.
Yeah, the gestures seem to be, there's a tap and a flick. So tapping is usually to select, flicking is usually to navigate between items. So that's just kind of a light touch with a turn of the wrist. Okay, so that's what VoiceOver sounds like. It really can be kind of challenging to use if you're not used to using it because it totally changes the way you interact with the iPad. That's VoiceOver. Zoom is our screen magnifier. So I'm going to turn on Zoom. Zoom magnifies the entire screen. So to zoom, you double tap, so tap, tap with 3 fingers. So that magnified the screen. We see less of the screen now. And then to change the zoom level, you actually double tap with your 3 fingers and then drag. So I drag down to decrease the zoom level, double tap, drag up to increase it. If I want to move around the screen, I turn on the zoom and then drag my 3 fingers around. So again, for someone who had a visual disability, this could be helpful in that it magnifies the print. It would help them, for example, read an email, the text of it better. Other options, large text. It's off right now, so we're kind of using the standard font. There's some additional options. You can see it ranges from 20-point text all the way up to 56. So I'm going to put it on 56 just so we can see. We don't see a huge difference immediately, and that's because these options don't work in every single thing on the iPad. Up at the top it tells us make text larger in contacts, mail, and notes. So it's going to help us in those parts. And if we're doing something else that's not mail, contacts, or notes, we might need to use another accessibility solution. But I'm going to open up one of those things so you can see what the large text looks like. when I first pulled this iPad out of the box, and I found it really annoying, so I turned it off. But it can be helpful, particularly to folks who have a visual disability. So that automatically says aloud corrections or capitalization. So if you're typing and you misspell something, instead of just having that visual alert, it's going to give you an auditory alert. So let's take a look at that. So I've got the Speak Auto Text on. I'm going to turn on the Notes application, and I'm going to intentionally misspell something. So is this
Working.
So I type rocking, W-R-O-K-I-N-G, and aloud it's telling me, do you want to use working? In addition to just having that little visual cue. So that can be an accessibility feature as well, or just a convenience feature. Okay. So these are the accessibility features that typically help with vision access needs. There's some other features as well. Hearing, mono audio, what that does is it takes the audio coming out of the iPad and switches it from a dual channel kind of stereo type audio to a mono one channel audio. That could be particularly useful if you're having a hearing device connected to the iPad. You could have all the audio kind of going into that one channel instead of the two channels where you'd miss out on half of the audio. Like not everyone really remembers, when you could listen to tapes and you could actually hear the different tracks, and something would be messed up and you'd only hear kind of the foreground or the background vocals. That's like a dual channel. Mono would make sure you heard all of that at one time. There is a headphone jack, which can be useful if you're using something to amplify. There's also Bluetooth audio. That's explicitly mentioned as an accessibility feature, so I'm going to switch back over to that accessibility menu. And you can see where mono audio is highlighted or is included there. The other features aren't really categorized as accessibility features. And again, I think this kind of represents the sort of universal design approach of the device. There's a lot of things in it that you can use to help you increase your access that aren't necessarily labeled accessibility. FaceTime is a video chatting program. And that could be useful, for example, if you use sign language to communicate, or if you benefited from lip reading. Being able to use that iPad to video chat with someone would be a way possibly for you to even communicate without having to use a relay operator. So, on the commercials and stuff, they show FaceTime as you're talking to your girlfriend or seeing the grandkids, but you could also use that as an accessibility option. The iPad does support closed captioning, so if a video has been created that uses closed captioning, the iPad does have the ability to play that. And it also includes visual alerts. Some other features of the iPad that might be of use to people with physical or motor access needs. Its size and weight. So a lot of these dedicated assistive technology devices are huge. It's a really big, bulky item. The iPad is light. You can shove it in your purse. You can shove it in your backpack. That can be appealing to someone who maybe has limited mobility. It does have a large display, so instead of your little smartphone, you've got a nice big display. It does have some tactile buttons, so rather than having to do everything on the touch screen, it does have like tactile home button or on and off. We have a switch on the side that we can change the function of. Again, that can be an accessibility benefit. It has the ability to change the orientation, so I have it locked right now, so when I move the iPad, oops. Come back to me. Well, I lost the iPad. has multiple orientations, so you can have it upright and have things appearing in a vertical manner, or when you flip it to the side, it can switch to a horizontal view. Some people really like that. It's very responsive, but it also offers you the option to lock it. So again, if you maybe had some issues with control of your limbs or your mobility, it might be helpful for you to use one of those features, one or the other. It also offers predictive text, so if I, for some reason, have difficulty typing or inputting text, the ability to have it autocomplete my words might be an accessibility feature for me. And then one can use the iPad with an external keyboard. Okay, so those are all things that are built into the iPad. Comes straight out of the box. We don't have to do anything special. Every iPad has them. And the particular iPad that I'm using today is an iPad 2. The first iPad came out in April 2010, I believe. The second generation iPad came out about a year later, so March 2011. It's called the iPad 2. The difference is primarily that it's lighter, a little faster. It uses a gyroscope instead of an accelerometer. That's kind of a fancy way for saying that instead of it sensing kind of up and down, it can sense kind of more directions when you move it around. Those are some differences, but again, a lot of the functions are the same. So even though I'm using an iPad 2, when I say iPad, I'm referring to both of them. So both versions of the iPad, you have those things straight out of the box. But there are other things you can add called apps, which an app is usually a small program that is built for one particular purpose. So on my phone, I have an app for Redbox, the movie vending machines. All that Redbox app does is tell me where a vending machine is and if it has a particular movie. I can't use it to get online. I can't use it to make phone calls. It doesn't tell me anything about showtimes at the local theater. That app is made for that specific purpose. So when I'm talking about an app, I'm talking about something that you add on to complete a specific task or set of tasks. So there's some built-in apps that come with the iPad, like YouTube, Mail, Contacts, iBooks, but then there are also apps that are built by developers or third parties. And the difference is important because while most of the Apple apps are able to utilize these accessibility features, not all third-party or developer apps will work. Let's see if I can bring up the web page. Okay. The reason why some apps will work with Apple's accessibility features and others won't is something called an API. Basically a set of standards or code or guidelines that Apple puts out that says, hey developers, if you use this, your app will work with VoiceOver. People can change the text size or they can use Zoom. If you don't use this, it's not going to work. So Apple doesn't require these third-party developers to use the accessibility API. So again, your mileage may vary with the accessibility of apps. Okay. So how do you find apps? A few different places. The App Store has a category called Special Education. There isn't any kind of category called, disability or labeled with a particular kind of disability. These apps can be for anywhere in the communication category, lifestyle, education. Again, it helps if you search more for the function, like magnify, as opposed to visual disability. But there is a category in the App Store called Special Education. This computer has iTunes, it'll open up in iTunes. If not, that's okay. Okay, I'm going to let it kind of run. Oh, here we go. Okay, so this is the special education category. lot of the focus is on children or K through 12. Another good place to find apps for access, the Georgia State has a technology program that does something called Tools for Life. So this is basically a database of apps that an assistive technology program has put together. So this is great because it allows you to search for what type of app you need, what your need is. Is it hearing? Is it vision? Do you want to work on math, memory need, example? You can also choose by price, and it's not just Apple apps, it's also Android apps. So this is a great list of apps that can help with access needs. That's another place you can find them. And then Appalicious. I didn't know about Appalicious until I started preparing for this presentation. Anybody heard of that before? Appalicious. I don't know if it's new or what. It's associated with Yahoo, it looks like, but it's basically a directory of apps or a collection of app reviews. So you've got all these great curated lists. A user has the ability to go in and create a list of apps that they like or recommend for a particular purpose. So, you know, a librarian might go in and put together a list of their favorite ebook apps, for example. So Appalicious is a great place to look, and there's this guy on Appalicious, Louis P. Thanks, Louis, for your list. Who works in instructional technology, and he's put together some excellent curated lists. Favorite apps for visual needs, hearing needs, etc. So Appalicious is another good place to find apps. Okay, I want to show you guys some specific apps. I think I might have to do it with a video as opposed to on the actual iPad. I apologize for that. Okay, so Proloquo to Go is an example of one app that can help with access needs. It is an augmentative and alternative communication app, AAC. Basically, augmentative and alternative communication device is something that allows people to send and receive messages. So it could be like an electronic soundboard that someone pressed a button and was able to read text. Or it could be, again, a piece of paper. It's just something that you use to send and receive messages. So this app allows people to do that. It may be useful for people who have experienced a stroke and it changed their speech. It can be helpful for children and adults with autism who may have trouble communicating. There are a number of different applications for it. Let's take a look at what it looks like. once you download the Proloquo app and you open it up, you can use it in a couple different ways. One is to use kind of built-in, pre-populated sets of vocabulary. So they have categories like food or actions, common greetings, hello, goodbye, thank you. You can press those and it will speak those phrases or words aloud. Another way to use Proloquo is to type in a message and then have it speak the message aloud. It automatically retains the most recent messages you've used, or again, you can kind of program it to have sayings that you use regularly. I'll give an example of this, and this isn't with Proloquo. This is a traditional kind of communication board that this is an alternative to. And when the place where I used to work, we had a reading clinic and had a teenager who had been coming to reading clinic for months, but she never brought her communication device with her, so I had really never heard her speak. And I think one of the first things she said to me, with her own program custom vocabulary that she chose, I said something like, you know, oh, okay, it's time to stop playing on the computer and move into the reading clinic, and I heard, you wish. So, which is typical, you know, a teenage, whatever, you know, that type of thing. So again, you kind of have the ability to play with it and customize it and give it your own voice to some extent. Sound Amp R is a sound application app. It works with iPhone, iPod, is how it's advertised, but it also works on the iPad. It allows you to amplify sound as it comes in. So if I have headset plugged into the iPad and I'm running this, it will amplify the volume in the room. So that might be an alternative to a hearing aid, for example. Someone came to the library maybe to hear a speaker and they didn't bring a hearing device with them. Maybe you could try Sound Amp R. Another option that's kind of cool with this app is that you can record and replay. So use it to maybe take notes in an instruction session, or if someone was kind of walking you through, you know, the process of finding a particular database, the user could record that, and then it will also, just with one touch, kind of automatically replay back the last 30 seconds of conversation, which I think is particularly nice, maybe for people who are hard of hearing and don't want to be drawing attention to that or constantly asking people to repeat themselves. You know, they can discreetly press this button and, you know, it looks like they're listening to music on their iPad. Digitize is a audio scanner and labeler. So one use of this is that one would take the iPad running Digitize and scan a barcode. For example, in this picture it shows, I think, a can of soup. And that would query a database and it would read aloud what the product was. So, you know, I've pulled a can out of the cabinet, I don't know what it is, I can scan it and it'll say Campbell's Cream and Chicken soup. So I independently know what that can of soup is. Another neat thing is that you can also create and print your own labels. So I could definitely see applications for this in a library. We really like labels.
Have you tried it on an ISBN code?
No, I have not tried. Most of these I have not tried because they require purchase.
Okay.
And, you know, I didn't feel like I could probably build them directly to the library. But I've used things that aren't apps that are like this, and a neat way that people sometimes use them is make their own label to put in clothing. You know, this is the pink shirt, or, you know, these are the red socks, that type of thing. So being able to create and print your own labels is a really nice feature too. So maybe you want to label, this is the self-checkout machine, or this is the copier. Eyeglasses is a magnifier. So it does kind of a little bit like the Zoom, but it uses the camera. So if I'm having trouble reading something because the print's too small, I can take my iPad and hold it up to that print and have it magnify the text. Sign for Me, it describes itself as a sign language translator. This is really more for learning sign language than a communication app. It would probably, the way it works is that you type in a phrase and then the avatar signs it. So it's problematic for a couple reasons. One is that there's kind of not a direct path to translate American Sign Language from print to sign. Sign is kind of more conceptual, rather than, here's a sign for this word, here's a sign for this word. But, and also if someone were needing to communicate, if they were deaf and they signed, probably in the library what we might have them do is just have them write it down on a piece of paper. But this is kind of cool, so I wanted to show it. You would type in your phrase and then the character would sign it. Zoom Reader, apparently right now does not work on the iPad, unfortunately, but supposedly it's coming to iPad. I think this is great for libraries because using the camera, what it basically does is take a picture of text, and then it uses optical character recognition to scan the text and then read it aloud. So, we have maybe an old journal article in a print volume that we don't have available electronically. We could take a picture of it, run the optical character recognition, and then have the app read it aloud to us. So I think that would be a fantastic use in a library. Just to immediately be able to do that rather than have to, request an item in an alternate format or, go to our desk and scan something and download it and run the recognition just to be able to use an app. So apparently the reason why it's not working with the iPad right now is the quality of the camera on the iPad is not as good as the iPhone or the iPod. But supposedly future versions of the operating system that might change it, or maybe a future iPad will have a better hardware with the camera. But this is available for the iPod and the iPhone. I did want to talk specifically, since we're talking about libraries, about ebook reading. This is where I'm particularly bummed that I can't demo it, but basically iBooks is Apple's e-reader application. So it's made by Apple. VoiceOver works with it. So if the item is a title that you've acquired through the iBooks app, it's typically an EPUB. VoiceOver can read that EPUB, or if it's an accessible PDF document, VoiceOver can read that. So again, you just use that built-in automatic accessibility feature to read books in the iBook store, which is great. I really want to show that. Bear with me. The website where the presentation resources are. Try to crank the volume again. That should seem quiet. Yeah, I don't think we're gonna be able to hear that. Well, basically, if you're using iBooks, so Apple's own ebook app, you're gonna be able to use VoiceOver in most cases. And that's really nice because you can use it the same way as how I demonstrated VoiceOver earlier. You can just run your finger across the text and it'll read it aloud. Or flick your fingers up and down the page and it will kind of continuously read aloud until you tell it not to. Difference between iBooks, Apple's own app, and then a couple of the other popular ebook apps, Nook, Barnes & Noble, e-reader, Kindle, the Amazon e-reader app, little to no support for VoiceOver because they haven't implemented that accessibility API. Apparently with the Nook, you can get a little bit of system information, like this is the Nook app, but no content from the actual book. Kindle, apparently it really won't read much of anything, so that's kind of a bummer. But they do feature some options for changing the font size, the color, and the brightness. And this is also true of iBooks. You can enlarge the font, you can change the contrast so you're reading white text on a black background, you can change the brightness of the screen. So these are things that have benefits to accessibility, but again, they can help everyone. You know, I'm in a really dark room. I don't need it on the highest brightness. I want to turn the brightness down. Reading aloud, the Kindle app will read aloud ebooks where a text-to-speech has been enabled. So people who have Kindles, I don't have one, but I might have used this, where certain publishers will enable the ability for a text-to-speech functionality where the Kindle will read the book aloud. It's only certain books because the publishers won't always do it. Nook, it really only reads aloud their read-to-me titles, which is mostly children's books at this point. It's really not exactly the same as using a screen reader, but that is how you can get those two apps to read aloud to you in a limited way. Recording for the blind and dyslexic, RFB and D. Does anyone have any experience working with them as an educator personally? They recently changed their name to Learning Ally, and this is basically a service where members have access to hundreds of thousands of DAISY formatted audiobooks. DAISY format is just kind of a marked up audiobook where there's some additional tagging and metadata that allow people to navigate it a little more precisely than a regular audiobook. So people who are members of RFB&D, and this would be a lot of particularly students who have print disabilities, would be using this. They also do have an app that you could provide on an iPad. Oh, I just have a few more minutes left. Okay, libraries. Who's doing this stuff? Well, not a lot of people. And I think part of that is because it's so new. You know, we are talking about the iPad just coming out, the first one in 2010. The libraries that I have found that are using it for assistive technology purposes are typically libraries that have kind of special services to people with disabilities. So a library for people who are blind, or a library for the deaf and hard of hearing are using it. Also, there are some libraries that do assistive technology lending programs, and so they're lending the iPad for people to use as assistive technology. But I think a lot of libraries aren't really lending the iPad right now. You know, I think we're still kind of trying to figure out how we actually go about doing that.
I was gonna say, have you figured out how to get it where it's not locked? It's because you have to lock it into the iTunes and get one account, and how to safely manage that as well as get the iPad back.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why people aren't doing it, and some are just in general, you know, that would be true of any library user. But also with these assistive technology functions, a lot of them involve like specialization or customization, changing settings. So that would be difficult for multiple users to use that. It would be hard to save individual settings. So kind of the same thing with libraries in general. It would be hard to keep track of books that are only supposed to be on this one, or apps that are only supposed to be on this one. A lot of these settings, it would be hard to save. So basically, for my personal opinion, is that iPad as assistive technology in the library has a lot of applications for us as librarians to use when assisting people who have access needs. It doesn't seem particularly well suited to hand to a library user for them to use as assistive technology. Maybe a good way for us to communicate with people, or when they're having trouble accessing material, maybe using some of these features on the iPad to read aloud an article, for example, but probably not entirely practical to give library users an iPad to use for accessibility purposes. Most people have kind of their own assistive technology set up, and wouldn't need to depend on the library for their assistive technology. But it would be good for us to have these just to make them available to help them with these library-specific needs. So we talked about kind of a little bit of the considerations why people aren't lending them. I wanted to spend the last few minutes for us to talk about ideas we had for how we could use it. And I still want to do that, but I also want to allow at least a couple minutes for questions. So I realized that I didn't get to show you so much. I'm really sorry that some of the demo stuff we weren't able to work out, but I've listed the URL on my website there, and there are videos of the things that I was hoping to demo. All those app developers have demo videos, so you can see the app actually in action. So I hope you'll take advantage of that. But having seen the little bit that we did, does anyone have any questions or thoughts to share, ideas?
Hey, have you gotten to use it with any patrons yet?
I have not, and Rachel's from my library, so I personally haven't used the iPad a lot with patrons. The only use of the iPad I've had with patrons was an activity with a group of visiting high school students, and we used the camera. So I haven't used it with patrons at all for accessibility or other purposes at all. So I know that you're doing a lot of work with that. Have you had a chance to use it with patrons yet?
Well, I've used it with patrons, but not for accessibility
Right.
reasons, though.
Yeah, like looking stuff up in the catalog.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Basically like how you use a laptop, well, it's just more mobile.
Right.
Yeah. But we have only had them practice them this summer.
Yeah.
So, as you've had it longer, and there's times that needs to be surrounded.
Right. That's true. Not a lot of opportunity yet. Did you have?
Yeah, we have a staff member who is legally blind, and most of what she does, I don't know what accessibility technology she uses, but our online catalog, we just got a new one, and it doesn't work with it. So her time at the circulation desk makes 0% sense. But if the iPad would work with it, then she can, magnify it, and that would completely solve a million problems. And she doesn't have to be in her office to be able to read something with her magnifier. Like the eyeglasses app,
Right.
she can walk around with an iPad, take a picture of it,
And
magnify it, or have it read to her.
Right.
So that's
Yeah, that would be really cool. There's a lot of ifs there. I know, there's an issue sometimes with accessing OPACs on iPads, period, or any mobile device. But if it could be accessed on the iPad, if you could use those features, that would be really helpful.
Even on I just pulled up our website. I mean, you can just zoom in like this.
Yeah.
So
Without even using Zoom, just
Yeah.
using the pinch.
You mentioned that you hadn't bought very many apps because of budget
Right.
and all that, and licensing, I'm sure. But if you did have a budget, what would be some of the apps that you'd be first to buy,
Right.
and what's their price range?
I would definitely buy that Zoom reader just as soon as it would work for the iPad. And we actually have a couple of the iPods that it would work with, and that's the one again where you can take the picture of the page and then it'll read aloud. Just because that's such a need across campus. A lot of times, there's a print textbook or print article that's just not accessible without a lengthy process of getting that print.
I have a question
Yeah.
on that, is the Zoom reader, can you save multiple pages, and what about copyright here, or what do you
Right.
do, like just take images of whole books? and
Right.
store them?
I'm assuming that since it's based on images, that you can probably save as many as the images as you have memory for. What I don't know about is saving like the OCR text. You probably can because it wasn't made for librarians, and so they weren't thinking about copyright. Like it's probably possible. I don't know if you should, but you probably are only limited by the storage on the device is what I'm thinking.
And the cost for that is?
Zoom
Do you
reader.
I just looked it up. Oh, no, didn't look it up.
Just a ballpark, 50, 10, 100?
The most expensive of the ones I showed you today was the Prolo Quota Go. It's $189, which sounds really expensive when you're thinking of apps. Okay, Zoom Reader's $20, $19.99. $189 sounds really high when you're talking about apps, but when you're talking about assistive technology devices, that's super cheap. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts to share? We'll have you'll access the presentation materials, and if you find something else that you come across, that you'll add it to the comments. If you have a question about anything you read, that you'll email me, or, I'm really sorry we didn't get to demo some stuff, but the demos are there, and I hope you'll have a chance to take a look at those to enhance your presentation experience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.